Marcus Chen adjusted his tie for the 10th time as the shuttle descended towards Zephyria Prime. The planet looked beautiful from space, with its purple oceans and golden continents, but Marcus felt nothing but nervousness. He was just a mid-level diplomat from Earth, and this was his first big mission to an alien world. The Zephyrian Empire controlled this entire sector of space. Their people had been traveling between stars for thousands of years while humans were still learning to make fire. Now Earth wanted to trade with them, and Marcus was part of the small team sent to make it happen. "Remember, Chen," said Ambassador Williams, the team leader, "keep your mouth shut unless spoken to. These aliens think we're barely civilized. Don't give them more reasons to look down on us." Marcus nodded. He had studied Zephyrian culture for months. They were tall, thin beings with forearms and large compound eyes like insects. They valued tradition, respect, and proper behavior above all else. One wrong move could ruin everything. The Imperial Palace was massive, built from some kind of crystal that changed colors in the light. Guards in flowing robes escorted the human delegation through halls filled with artwork from dozens of different alien species. Everything was designed to show how powerful and ancient the Zephyrian Empire was. The reception hall buzzed with activity. Hundreds of aliens from different worlds had gathered for the formal dinner. Marcus recognized some species from his studies, but many were completely new to him. All of them seemed to ignore the human delegation entirely. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," said a voice behind them. Marcus turned to see a Zephyrian noble approaching. This one wore robes covered in jewels and had golden bands around all four arms. His compound eyes glittered with what Marcus hoped was friendliness. "I am Ambassador Crixtal," the alien said in perfect English. "I have been assigned to ensure your comfort during your stay." Something about Crixtal's tone made Marcus uncomfortable, but he smiled politely. "Thank you for your hospitality. We're honored to be here." The dinner began with a long ceremony honoring the Zephyrian Emperor. Marcus tried to follow along, but the alien customs were confusing. When the food arrived, he did his best to eat properly with the strange utensils they provided. Everything was going well until Marcus reached for his drink. The cup was made of the same crystal as the palace walls, and it was more slippery than he expected. As he lifted it, the purple liquid inside sloshed over the rim and splashed directly onto Ambassador Crixtal's expensive robes. The entire hall fell silent. Crixtal's compound eyes went dark with anger. Purple stains spread across his jeweled clothing, and the smell of the alien wine filled the air around them. Every creature in the room was staring at the clumsy human who had just humiliated one of their most important nobles. "I'm so sorry." Marcus jumped up, grabbing a napkin. "Let me help clean that up." "Do not touch me," Crixtal hissed, backing away. His voice was cold as ice. "You have done quite enough, human." Ambassador Williams quickly stepped in. "Please forgive my colleague. It was an accident. We'll pay for any damage to your clothing." Crixtal said nothing. He simply stared at Marcus with those dark compound eyes, then turned and walked away without another word. The conversations in the hall slowly resumed, but Marcus could feel eyes on him for the rest of the evening. "Great job, Chen," Williams muttered. "We haven't even started negotiations yet, and you've already made an enemy." Marcus spent the rest of the dinner in miserable silence. He had trained for this mission for months, and he had ruined it in the first hour. Every time he looked up, he saw Crixtal talking quietly with other Zephyrian nobles, occasionally glancing in his direction. The next day brought more meetings and ceremonies. Marcus tried to stay in the background, but he could tell the other aliens had heard about his mistake. Some whispered when he passed. Others simply ignored him completely. The human delegation was already being treated like unwelcome guests. On the third day, Crixtal approached Marcus in one of the palace gardens. The Zephyrian's manner had changed completely. Instead of anger, he now seemed almost friendly. "Human Marcus," Crixtal said with what might have been a smile. "I hope you are enjoying your visit to our world." "Yes, sir. And again, I'm very sorry about the other night." "Think nothing of it," Crixtal waved a hand dismissively. "In fact, I have been thinking. You seem fascinated by our culture and history. Would you like to see something very special?" Marcus was surprised by the sudden change in attitude, but he didn't want to refuse. "That would be wonderful, sir." "Excellent. Tonight, after the formal ceremonies, I will arrange a private tour. You will see the most sacred chamber in our entire empire. Very few aliens have ever been granted such an honor." That evening, Crixtal led Marcus and several other Zephyrian nobles through parts of the palace he had never seen before. The halls grew more ancient as they walked, filled with artifacts and artwork that must have been thousands of years old. "Where are we going?" Marcus asked. "To the throne room," Crixtal replied. "Home of the celestial throne, the seat of power for our empire. It is said to choose our emperors, rejecting those who are unworthy." They entered a vast chamber with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. At the center sat the most beautiful piece of furniture Marcus had ever seen. The throne was made of some kind of living crystal that seemed to glow from within. Strange symbols covered its surface and the air around it hummed with energy. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Crixtal said. "The throne has chosen every emperor for 10,000 years. It knows the hearts of all who approach it." The other Zephyrian nobles gathered around, their compound eyes glittering with anticipation. Marcus suddenly realized something was wrong. This felt like a trap. "In fact," Crixtal continued, "I thought you might like to experience the honor of sitting upon it. As our honored guest, of course." Marcus looked at the throne, then at the aliens surrounding him. He could see the cruel amusement in their expressions. They expected him to be hurt or humiliated when the throne rejected him. This was their revenge for his accident with the wine. "I don't think that's appropriate," Marcus said carefully. "I'm just a visitor here." "Nonsense," Crixtal insisted. "I insist. It would be an insult to refuse such a generous offer." Marcus realized he had no choice. If he refused, it would be seen as an insult to their culture. If he accepted, the throne would probably reject him painfully, giving these aliens the entertainment they wanted. Either way, he would look foolish. "Very well," he said quietly, "if you're sure it's appropriate." The nobles stepped back, giving him a clear path to the throne. Marcus walked forward slowly, feeling the energy in the air grow stronger with each step. The crystal seat seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. He turned around and carefully sat down on the ancient throne. For a moment, nothing happened. The nobles waited, barely containing their laughter. Marcus started to stand up, thinking the joke had failed. Then the throne began to glow. The crystal beneath him warmed, and light spread through the carved symbols like fire through dry wood. The humming grew louder, filling the chamber with a sound like singing. Marcus felt a strange tingling in his mind, as if something was trying to speak to him. The laughter died on the noble's lips. Crixtal's compound eyes went wide with shock and fear. The throne hadn't rejected the human. Instead, it was welcoming him with a light brighter than any of them had ever seen. Marcus gripped the armrests as power flowed through him, not knowing that his life had just changed forever. The light from the throne grew brighter, filling the entire chamber with blue-white radiance. Marcus felt something incredible happening in his mind. It was like a door opening in his thoughts, revealing rooms he never knew existed. Suddenly, he wasn't alone in his head anymore. Images flooded his consciousness. He saw the rise and fall of civilizations, watched stars being born and dying, felt the weight of decisions that affected billions of lives. These weren't his memories, but they felt real. He was experiencing the thoughts and feelings of every ruler who had ever sat on this throne. The most amazing part wasn't the power or the knowledge. It was the emotions. Each emperor had carried the same burden: love for their people and fear of making the wrong choice. Marcus felt their dedication, their sleepless nights worrying about wars and famines and plagues they couldn't prevent. The throne wasn't just a seat of power. It was a connection to every living being in the empire, a way to feel their hopes and fears as if they were his own. Around him, the Zephyrian nobles stumbled backward in shock. The psychic network that connected all their minds was suddenly filled with new sensations. They were feeling what Marcus felt, seeing what he saw, and it terrified them. "Impossible," Crixtal whispered, his forearms shaking. "The throne has been silent for decades. It hasn't chosen anyone since—" The great doors at the far end of the chamber burst open. Guards in ceremonial armor rushed in, followed by more nobles and court officials. Word was spreading quickly through the palace that something was happening in the throne room. Then Emperor Vithak himself entered. Marcus had only seen pictures of the Zephyrian emperor before. In person, he was even more impressive. Vithak stood nearly 8 feet tall, with deep purple skin and compound eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. Golden armor covered his thin frame, and a crown of living crystal sat on his narrow head. But what struck Marcus most was the sadness in those ancient eyes. What is the meaning of this? The Emperor demanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. Krixtal fell to his knees immediately. Your Majesty, we were showing the human delegation your throne room. The alien sat upon the celestial throne as a joke, but it accepted him. Vithak finished, staring at Marcus with a mixture of anger and confusion. The throne that has been silent throughout my entire reign suddenly blazes with life for an alien. Marcus tried to stand, but the throne held him gently in place. Energy continued to flow through him, bringing new understanding with each passing moment. He could sense the Emperor's inner turmoil. Vithak had always wondered why the throne never responded to him the way it had to previous rulers. I'm sorry, Your Majesty, Marcus said, his voice surprisingly calm despite the chaos around him. I never meant for this to happen. They asked me to sit here and I didn't want to be rude. More people were entering the chamber now. Marcus saw his fellow humans pushing through the crowd, their faces pale with shock. Ambassador Williams looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Then the crowd parted for someone new. The High Oracle glided into the room like a ghost. Marcus had never seen anything like her before. She belonged to a species so ancient that no one remembered their true name. Her body was translucent, shifting between solid and spirit, and her eyes held starlight. Every being in the chamber, including the Emperor, bowed as she approached. The Oracle moved directly to the throne, her glowing form casting strange shadows on the crystal walls. She looked at Marcus for a long moment, studying him with those star-filled eyes. The Outlander, she said in a voice like wind through crystal caves. The bridge builder, the one who will unite what has been divided. Oracle, the Emperor said carefully, surely there must be some mistake. This is just a human, a young species, barely worthy of our attention. The Oracle turned those ancient eyes on Vithak, and even the mighty Emperor stepped back. The throne does not make mistakes, she said simply. It has waited through your reign, through your father's reign, through 3 generations of rulers for the right soul to claim it. That soul sits before us now, but he's not even Zephyrian. Krixtal protested from where he knelt. How can an alien rule our empire? The Oracle's laugh was like music from another world. Rule? Child, you understand nothing. The throne does not choose rulers. It chooses servants. Those who will carry the burden of all people, not just their own. Marcus felt the truth of her words and the throne's energy. Every emperor who had sat here had been chosen not for their strength or intelligence, but for their willingness to sacrifice everything for others. The throne looked into hearts, not at species or bloodlines. I can feel them, Marcus whispered, still overwhelmed by the sensations flowing through him. All of them. Every world in the Empire. There's so much pain, so much need. He saw flashes of the problems facing the Empire, a plague spreading through the outer colonies, civil war brewing in systems that felt ignored by the central government, pirates raiding trade routes while the Imperial fleet was stretched too thin, and something else, something dark approaching from beyond the known galaxy, hungry and dangerous. The human speaks truth, the Oracle said. The throne shows him what we have all ignored. Our empire is fracturing, and a great threat comes from the void between galaxies. Emperor Vithak's face went pale. What kind of threat? But before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Guards rushed into the throne room with urgent messages. Reports were coming in from the outer rim. Entire star systems had gone dark, their signals simply stopping without warning. Marcus felt the fear ripple through the psychic network. The throne showed him images of the approaching danger, ships unlike anything in known space consuming matter itself as they traveled. They called themselves the Devourers, and they were heading directly for the heart of the Empire. The trials, the Emperor said suddenly. If this human claims the throne's acceptance, he must prove his worth through the trials of ascension. The Oracle nodded solemnly. It is the law. 3 trials to test the heart, mind, and soul. Many have died attempting them. Marcus finally understood what was happening. Through some impossible chance, he had been chosen by an alien artifact to lead an empire of billions. The responsibility was terrifying, but the throne's energy gave him strength. I accept, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. If the throne has chosen me, I won't run from that responsibility. Ambassador Williams pushed forward through the crowd. Marcus, what are you doing? We're diplomats, not rulers. Earth Command will never approve of this. Earth Command doesn't get a vote, Marcus replied, feeling the throne's certainty flow through him. Something is coming that will destroy everything if we don't unite to stop it. I've seen it through the throne's eyes. The Emperor studied Marcus for a long moment. Despite his shock and confusion, Vithak was wise enough to recognize truth when he heard it. Very well, he said finally. The trials will begin at dawn. If you survive them and prove worthy, the throne will be yours by right. If you fail... He didn't need to finish the sentence. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Marcus remained seated on the glowing throne. The energy continued to flow through him, bringing understanding of languages he had never learned, knowledge of star systems he had never visited, and the overwhelming emotional weight of responsibility for billions of lives. He thought about his small apartment back on Earth, his job at the diplomatic corps, his quiet life among his own species. All of that felt very far away now. The throne hummed softly, offering comfort and strength. Whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. The accumulated wisdom of centuries of rulers was with him, and somewhere in the vast network of consciousness, he could feel the hopes of countless beings who desperately needed someone to believe in. Marcus took a deep breath and prepared to become something he never imagined possible, the first human, emperor of an alien empire. Dawn came too quickly for Marcus. He had spent the night in a guest chamber, but sleep was impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, the throne's connection showed him more visions of the Empire's problems. Worlds suffering from disease, rebellions brewing in forgotten systems, and always that dark presence approaching from beyond known space. The trial chamber was deep beneath the palace, carved from black stone that seemed to absorb light. Ancient symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly with their own energy. Marcus stood in the center of the room wearing simple white robes they had given him. Around the edges of the chamber, dozens of nobles and officials watched in silence. Emperor Vithak stepped forward, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's eerie light. Human Marcus Chen, you have claimed the right to the celestial throne. To prove your worth, you must face 3 trials that have tested rulers for 10,000 years. Many have died in these trials. Do you still accept this challenge? Marcus felt the throne's distant presence encouraging him. Even here, far from the crystal seat, he could sense its support flowing through him. I accept, he said. The High Oracle glided to the center of the chamber, her translucent form shimmering. The first trial tests your capacity for empathy. You will experience the suffering of every world in our empire simultaneously. Previous candidates have been driven mad by this trial. If you survive, you will understand the weight of leadership. Before Marcus could prepare himself, pain exploded through his consciousness. Suddenly, he was everywhere at once. He felt the burning fever of plague victims on Corvash 7. He experienced the hunger of children on worlds where crops had failed. He lived through the terror of families whose planets were being attacked by pirates. Every form of suffering in the Empire flooded into his mind at the same time. Other candidates had tried to block out the pain, to protect themselves from the overwhelming agony. But Marcus realized that was the wrong approach. Instead of fighting the suffering, he let himself feel it completely. He acknowledged every hurt, every fear, every desperate hope for a better future. The pain was terrible, but underneath it he found something else. Love. These people weren't just statistics or problems to be solved. They were individuals with families, dreams, and the same basic desire for safety and happiness that he had always felt. When the trial ended, Marcus was on his knees, tears streaming down his face. But his mind was intact. More than that, he now carried a deep understanding of what his empire needed from its leader. Remarkable, the Oracle whispered. He did not resist the pain, but embraced it. The second trial begins. The chamber around Marcus shifted and changed, becoming a massive holographic display showing 2 different star systems. In one, billions of people were dying from a terrible plague. In the other, a much smaller population held the key to curing that disease, but extracting the cure would destroy their world. Choose, Emperor Vithak commanded. Save the billions or preserve the smaller world that can create the cure. You cannot have both. Every emperor must make impossible choices. Marcus studied the display, feeling the weight of all those lives in his hands. Previous candidates had always chosen one or the other, accepting that leadership meant sacrificing some to save others. But Marcus couldn't accept that logic. No, he said firmly. No, the emperor sounded shocked. You must choose. That is the nature of leadership. I refuse the choice, Marcus replied, reaching out with the throne's power he could still feel inside him. There has to be another way. Instead of choosing between the two worlds, Marcus used the throne's connection to coordinate a different solution. He reached across space to contact scientists on dozens of different planets. Working together, they found a way to synthesize the cure without destroying its source. The larger world was saved, and the smaller one survived to help cure other diseases in the future. The Oracle's eyes widened with something like amazement. In 10,000 years, no candidate has ever refused the binary choice. You have shown wisdom beyond your years, human, but the hardest trial was yet to come. For the third test, the chamber filled with images from Marcus's own life. He saw every mistake he had ever made, every time he had failed someone who trusted him, every moment of cowardice or selfishness that had marked his path. Face yourself, the Oracle commanded. See the truth of who you are, not who you pretend to be. Marcus watched his failures play out before him. The time in school when he hadn't stood up for a friend being bullied. The diplomatic mission where his nervousness had ruined important negotiations. All the small moments when he had chosen the easy path instead of the right one. Other candidates had been destroyed by this trial, unable to accept their own flaws. But Marcus had learned something important during his time on the throne. Perfection wasn't what made a good leader. I see my failures, he said quietly. I see my fears and my weaknesses, but I also see that I learned from each mistake. I see that caring about others, even when I mess up, is more important than being perfect. The images of his failures shifted, showing how each one had taught him something valuable. His nervousness in negotiations had made him more careful to prepare. His early cowardice had taught him the cost of not standing up for what was right. A leader who has never failed, Marcus continued, has never tried anything difficult. I will make mistakes as emperor, but I will learn from them and do better. The trial chamber fell silent. Even Emperor Vithak looked stunned by what he had witnessed. Marcus had not only survived all 3 trials, but had approached them in ways no previous candidate ever had. The High Oracle bowed deeply, a gesture of respect that made everyone in the chamber gasp. The trials are complete, she announced. The human has proven himself worthy in ways that surpass our greatest emperors. The throne chose wisely. Before anyone could respond, new alarms echoed through the palace. Guards burst into the chamber with urgent reports. The dark ships Marcus had seen in his visions were closer than expected. They had consumed 3 more star systems in the outer rim, leaving nothing behind but empty space. The Devourers, Marcus said, the name coming to him through the throne's connection. They eat matter itself to fuel their journey across the void between galaxies. They've been traveling for millions of years, consuming everything in their path. Emperor Vithak turned to him with desperate eyes. Our fleets cannot stop them. Their ships adapt to every weapon we use. How can we fight something like that? Marcus closed his eyes and reached out through the throne's network, feeling the consciousness of every being in the Empire. Zephyrians with their psychic abilities, humans with their stubborn creativity, the crystal beings of the inner worlds with their technological mastery, the gas giant dwellers with their knowledge of energy manipulation. We can't fight them alone, he said, opening his eyes with new determination. But we're not alone. Every species in the Empire has different strengths. If we can unite them all, combine their abilities in ways never tried before, we might have a chance. Unity, the Oracle said softly. The bridge builder awakens to his purpose. Emperor Vithak studied Marcus for a long moment, then slowly removed the crystal crown from his own head. The trials have spoken. The throne has chosen. By the ancient laws of our empire, I pass the crown to the one who has proven worthy. As the crown settled on Marcus's human head, power flowed through him like nothing he had ever experienced. The throne's connection expanded, linking him not just to the palace but to every world in the empire. He could sense the approaching threat more clearly now, but he could also feel the vast potential of his people working together. Send word to every system, Marcus commanded, his voice carrying the authority of the throne. Tell them their new emperor calls for unity against the darkness. Every species, every world, every individual who can contribute to our defense. We have a galaxy to save. For the first time since the aliens had arrived, Marcus felt hope. The Devourers were powerful and ancient, but they had never faced anything like the combined strength of a truly united empire. The throne had chosen him to be a bridge between different peoples, and that bridge might be exactly what they needed to survive. The real test of his worthiness was about to begin. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A human had been chosen by the celestial throne and crowned emperor of the Zephyrian Empire. The reactions were swift and divided. Some worlds immediately declared their loyalty to the new emperor. The mining colonies of the Outer Rim, long ignored by the central government, saw hope in a leader who had felt their suffering during the trials. The scientific communities were fascinated by the idea of a ruler from a young, innovative species, but others revolted at the very idea. An alien on the throne is an insult to 10,000 years of tradition, declared Governor Zentar of the industrial world Machina Prime. We will not bow to this human pretender. 3 entire star systems declared independence rather than accept Marcus as their emperor. Military commanders split between those loyal to the throne itself and those who refused to serve under alien leadership. The empire that Marcus needed to unite against the Devourers was tearing itself apart. Making things worse, the human diplomatic team was in chaos. Ambassador Williams had been sending urgent messages to Earth, demanding instructions on how to handle the situation. "This is insane, Marcus," Williams said during a private meeting in the Imperial quarters. "You're a mid-level diplomat, not a ruler. Earth Command wants you extracted immediately before this turns into an interstellar incident." Marcus sat in a chair beside the celestial throne, which continued to glow softly with his presence. The crown felt heavy on his head, but the throne's energy gave him strength and clarity. "I can't leave," he replied simply. "The Devourers will destroy everything if we don't unite the Empire to stop them. Besides, the throne won't let me abandon this responsibility." "The throne?" Williams stared at the crystal seat. "Marcus, it's just an alien artifact. You're talking like it's alive." But Marcus knew better. Through his connection, he could feel the throne's consciousness. Not alive in the way humans understood it, but aware and purposeful. It had waited centuries for someone who could unite the Empire's fractured peoples, and it wouldn't give up its chosen emperor easily. The real surprise came from former Emperor Vithek himself. "Walk with me," the old Zephyrian said one morning, entering Marcus's chambers without ceremony. They strolled through the palace gardens, past fountains that played music and flowers that changed colors with the light. Other nobles watched nervously as their former emperor spoke privately with his human replacement. "I have ruled for 40 years, Vithek said, his compound eyes reflecting the garden's beauty. 40 years of the throne's silence, wondering why it never truly accepted me. Now I understand. Your Majesty, I never wanted to take your place," Marcus began, but Vithek raised a hand for silence. "The throne was not meant for me," the former emperor continued. "I was born to nobility, raised to believe in our superiority over younger species. But you see all people as equals. That is why it chose you." They stopped beside a pond filled with fish that glowed like living jewels. "Teach me," Vithek said simply. "Show me how to serve our people the way the throne intended." Marcus was stunned. Here was a being who had ruled an empire for decades, asking a human barely out of his 20s for guidance. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. "I don't know what I'm doing," Marcus admitted. "I'm making this up as I go along." Vithek's expression might have been a smile. "Good. The moment you think you know everything is the moment you stop learning." The throne chose wisely. Their conversation was interrupted by urgent alarms. Admiral Zixana, the Empire's chief military officer, rushed into the garden with her staff close behind. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing quickly to Marcus, "the Devourers have accelerated their approach. Our scouts report they will reach the core systems in less than a month." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the garden breeze. Through the throne's connection, he could sense the terror spreading through the Empire's outer worlds as the alien fleet drew closer. "What do our military experts recommend?" he asked. Admiral Zixana's 4 eyes went dark with frustration. "Every strategy we've tried has failed. The Devourers adapt to our weapons within minutes. Their ships literally eat our energy blasts and use them to grow stronger. What about evacuation? Impossible. They move faster than our civilian transports. Any world they target is doomed." Marcus closed his eyes and reached out through the throne's network, trying to sense the approaching threat more clearly. What he found chilled him to the bone. The Devourers weren't just hungry, they were desperate. He could feel their alien thoughts filled with an ancient sadness that made his heart ache. They had been fleeing the death of their own universe for millions of years, consuming everything in their path not out of cruelty, but out of a desperate need to survive. We need to unite the Empire's different species, Marcus said, opening his eyes. Every world, every culture has unique abilities. If we can combine them, the rebel systems won't cooperate, Admiral Zixana pointed out. Governor Zentar has threatened to attack any Imperial forces that enter his territory. Then I'll go to him personally. Both Vithak and the Admiral stared at him in shock. Your Majesty, Zixana protested, it's too dangerous. Zentar has called you a pretender and threatened to execute any Imperial representatives. The throne shows me that he's afraid, not evil, Marcus replied. He thinks a human emperor means the end of everything he values about Zephyrian culture. I need to show him he's wrong. Against everyone's advice, Marcus took a small diplomatic ship to Machina Prime. The industrial world was a maze of factories and mining operations, its sky dark with the smoke of constant production. Governor Zentar met him with armed guards and barely contained hostility. So, Zentar said, his compound eyes glittering with anger, the alien pretender comes to my world. Give me one reason why I shouldn't have you arrested. Marcus stood calmly before the hostile governor, feeling the throne's strength flow through him even at this distance. Because your world is about to be destroyed, and I'm the only one who can save it, he replied simply. He shared what he had learned about the Devourers through the throne's connection, their desperation, their power, and their inexorable approach toward the Empire's core worlds. As the reality of the threat became clear, Zentar's anger slowly gave way to fear. Even if what you say is true, the governor said finally, what can one human do that our greatest military minds cannot? I can bring together abilities that have never been combined before, Marcus replied. Your world's industrial capacity, the Korvashi energy manipulation techniques, Zephyrian psychic coordination, human tactical innovation. Separately, we're all too weak. Together we might be strong enough. It took hours of discussion, but slowly Zentar began to see the possibility. The throne had chosen Marcus not because he was human, but because he could see past the barriers that divided different species. You really believe this will work? Zentar asked. I have to believe it, Marcus replied, because if we fail, everyone dies. Human, Zephyrian, everyone. One by one, the rebel systems began to return to the Empire, not because they accepted Marcus as their rightful emperor, but because they recognized the truth of the approaching threat and the hope he offered. With less than 2 weeks before the Devourers arrived, Marcus stood again on the celestial throne, its power flowing through him as he coordinated the greatest military preparation in galactic history. Every species contributed their unique strengths to a defensive plan unlike anything ever attempted. The throne hummed with satisfaction. Its chosen emperor was finally beginning to understand his true purpose, not to rule over others, but to help them discover what they could accomplish together. The real test was about to begin. The Devourers arrived at the edge of the Empire like a dark tide sweeping across the stars. Their ships were unlike anything in known space, living vessels that seemed to bend reality around them, consuming light itself as they moved. Marcus stood on the bridge of the flagship Zephyria's Crown, watching the enemy fleet approach through the view screen. Around him, beings from dozens of different species worked together at stations that had been redesigned to accommodate their various forms. The bridge itself was a symbol of what the Empire had become under his leadership, united in diversity. Emperor, Admiral Zixana reported, her 4 arms working multiple control panels simultaneously. They're even larger than our scouts reported, over 10,000 ships, and each one is the size of a small moon. Marcus felt the fear ripple through the combined fleet's communication network. Even united, the Empire's forces seemed tiny compared to what approached them. But he also sensed something else through the throne's connection, determination, hope, and a willingness to fight for their homes. All ships, this is Emperor Marcus, he broadcast across the fleet. I know what you're feeling right now. These enemies seem impossible to defeat. But remember, every species in our empire has something unique to contribute. Today we discover what we can accomplish together. The first wave of Devourer ships struck the outer defense line. Imperial vessels opened fire with every weapon they possessed. But just as Admiral Zixana had warned, the alien ships absorbed the energy attacks and grew stronger. Phase 1 isn't working, reported Captain Colvin from the Korvashi energy research vessel. They're adapting to our weapons faster than predicted. Then we move to Phase 2, Marcus replied calmly. All Zephyrian mine ships begin the coordination. Across the fleet, Zephyrian vessels began linking their crew's consciousness into a single network. Every thought, every tactical insight, every split-second decision was shared instantly among thousands of minds. The Imperial fleet began moving as one organism, coordinating attacks and defenses with perfect timing. But even that wasn't enough. The Devourers adapted to their tactics within minutes, learning to counter their coordinated movements. Phase 3, Marcus ordered. Crystal singers now. The living ships of the resonance worlds began their ethereal songs. These crystal beings communicated through harmonics that could affect matter at the molecular level. Their music reached across space, causing the Devourer ships to vibrate with destructive frequencies. For a moment it looked like they had found the answer. Several enemy vessels began breaking apart under the crystal song assault, but the Devourers learned quickly, modifying their ship's structure to resist the harmonic attacks. They're too adaptable, Admiral Zixana said, her compound eyes dark with despair. Every strategy we try, they counter within minutes. Marcus closed his eyes and reached out through the throne's connection, trying to understand their enemies better. What he found shocked him to his core. The Devourers weren't evil. They were refugees. Through the psychic link, he experienced flashes of their history. Their universe was dying, consumed by entropy and darkness. For millions of years, they had fled across the void between realities, consuming matter not out of cruelty but out of desperate need to survive. They had watched their own stars die, their worlds crumble to dust, their people fade into nothingness. Admiral, Marcus said suddenly, order all ships to cease fire. Your Majesty? Zixana stared at him in shock. They'll destroy us. No, Marcus replied, standing up from his command chair. They're not destroyers. They're survivors trying to find a new home. Against every military instinct, the Imperial fleet stopped attacking. The Devourer ships continued their advance, but they also slowed, as if confused by the lack of resistance. Marcus activated the fleet's communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. Devourers of the void, he said, his voice carrying across space. I know what you are. I know why you consume worlds. Not from hunger, but from need. You're refugees from a dead universe trying to survive in ours. The alien fleet stopped completely. For the first time in millions of years, someone had understood them. A new voice responded over the communication channel. Ancient, tired, filled with unimaginable sadness. Little Emperor of the young races, the voice said, you speak truly. We are the last of our kind, fleeing the end of everything we knew. We consume because we must, not because we wish to bring harm. Then join us, Marcus replied without hesitation. Stop consuming worlds and become part of our empire. We have science you've never imagined, technologies that could help you survive without destroying others. The response came after a long pause, filled with disbelief. Join you? We who have devoured 1,000 civilizations? Everyone deserves a second chance, Marcus said firmly. Everyone deserves hope. Through the throne's connection, he shared his vision of what their combined civilizations could accomplish. The Devourers' ancient knowledge paired with the Empire's innovative spirit. Their mastery of space and time supporting the young race's drive to explore and create. The conversation that followed lasted hours. The Devourer Elder, ancient beyond measure, slowly began to believe that survival might be possible without endless consumption. The Imperial fleet waited in tense silence as their emperor negotiated not just for peace, but for a future none of them had imagined. Finally, the Devourer ships began to change. Their dark, consuming nature shifted to something brighter. Matter-eating technology transformed into matter-creating systems. Weapons became tools for construction instead of destruction. We accept, the Elder said. For the first time in eons, we choose creation over consumption. The combined fleet, Imperial and former Devourer ships together, returned to Zephyria Prime as heroes. But Marcus knew the real work was just beginning. Integrating an ancient refugee civilization into the Empire would take years of careful planning and diplomacy. Standing once again on the celestial throne, Marcus felt the artifact's deep satisfaction. This was what it had waited for. Not a conqueror, but a unifier. Not someone who ruled through strength, but someone who led through understanding. Emperor Marcus, former Emperor Vithak said, approaching the throne with a smile. "The Council of Worlds has been established as you requested. Every member species now has a voice in imperial governance." Marcus nodded, looking out through the throne room's crystal windows at the ships in orbit above. Imperial vessels flew alongside Devourer craft, their crews working together to plan the future. "And Earth's response to our new alliance?" Marcus asked. "They're sending a diplomatic mission," Vithak replied with what might have been amusement. "Led by Ambassador Williams. I believe he's finally accepting that you're not coming home anytime soon." Marcus laughed, a sound that would have been impossible just months ago when he was a nervous diplomat spilling wine on alien nobles. The throne's energy flowed through him, carrying the hopes and dreams of billions of beings across the galaxy. He was still human. He still missed Earth coffee, still made the occasional joke, still approached problems with the stubborn optimism that had made him worthy of the throne. But he had also become something more, a bridge between species, a leader who governed through service rather than dominance. The celestial throne hummed contentedly around him, its light steady and warm. After millennia of waiting, it had found exactly what it was looking for. Not the perfect ruler, but the right one. Someone who understood that true strength came not from power over others, but from the ability to help them discover their own potential. As Marcus settled into his role for the long work ahead, he smiled at the irony. The aliens had let him sit in their emperor's chair as a joke, expecting him to be rejected and humiliated. Instead, he had found his true calling, and the galaxy had found its hope for the future. The human emperor was home,